everybody on screen? I see some friends. So my name is Judith Keenan, and I'm going to read my talk tonight because I'm old and twice concussed and brain bled. So it would just be better for all of us if I do it this way. Okay, here's some backstory to explain how I ended up being Tenzo head cook at City Center in January of 2000. Through grace and good fortune, I went into, there's some echo here. Is that this, or should I just take out my hearing aid? I think I'm going to take these out. Here we go. Much better. Through grace and good fortune, I went into Tassajara in the spring of 1994 for a work period. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was a carpenter by trade and a general contractor. I give our late friend Jean DeSchmidt, the general contractor of the new bathhouse project at the time, credit for sucking me in. It turned out Jean needed a free carpenter. I needed Zen practice, and San Francisco Zen Center needed a carpenter and a superintendent. I didn't know it at the time, but I was running away from home in January of 1995. I ran away to Green Gulch, was only going to do one practice period, and ended up staying and participating in 2 practice periods that year and worked on the maintenance crew. In January of 1996, Rev Anderson, then the abbot of San Francisco Zen Center, started a 3-week intensive for people, a short practice period for people that couldn't do 3-month practice period. I was asked by Mayo Wender, the director, to work in the kitchen so that a kitchen worker could sit the intensive. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. I had a realization during that time that I was warm and dry in the kitchen for the first time in years, instead of doing maintenance during the worst winter. Didn't have to sit so much, and the kitchen had the best schedule in all of Zen Center. I went to the director and said I thought staying in the kitchen after the intensive would be good for my practice. That turned into a year in the kitchen. Lita Barrows, the late Lita Barrows, was the Tenzo. He was one of the kindest people I've known. I reluctantly went into Tassajara in January of 1997 and worked on the maintenance crew during my first practice period, Tongario. Who's done Tongario? No. Leslie James, the abiding teacher at Tassajara, was the director then. I had contemplated leaving Tassajara and Zen Center since Tongario, and toward the end of the practice period, she asked if we could talk. She said there was no one at Tassajara to be head of shop, and would I please be the head of shop for the spring work period and for the summer. She knew how to draw me in. That was the beginning of my creating a job for myself, supervising the small and some not so small construction projects during work periods. I worked in the kitchen for 2 practice periods in the fall of 1997 and the spring of 1998 because the schedule was better and not so much sitting. Sound familiar? While I was in the kitchen, Robert Thomas, the Tenzo, read short paragraphs in the book How to Cook Your Life, From the Zen Kitchen to Enlightenment, Dogen's Classic Instructions for the Zen Cook, Tenzo Kyokun. At our morning bow-in, when I went back to the shop, I thought it would be great to read short sections at the morning shop bow-in during the work period and then through the summer. Here's one of the first passages I read because there were a few people who left tools out on jobs and the shop was a mess, even though my instruction every morning was just like this instruction to the cook. Clean the chopsticks, ladles, and all other utensils, tools. Handle them with equal care and awareness, putting everything back where it naturally belongs. Keep your mind on your work and do not throw things around carelessly. Here's another along the same line. Conscientiously wash out the rice container and the soup pot along with any other utensils that were used. Put those things that naturally go on a high place onto a high place, and those that would be most stable on a low place onto a low place. Things that naturally belong on a high place settle best on a high place, while those which belong on a low place find their greatest stability there. On the no race weekend in 1998, after a walk up the mountain on a beautiful spring day, I was asked by Mary Mosine, then the director of City Center, to be Tenzo. Because it was my birthday and I had an abundance of endorphins, I said yes. In January of 1999, I left Tassajara and lived at Jamesburg for 9 months before going to City Center. I still supervised construction during the work periods. Here are some short stories from my time as Tenzo. Linda Cutts had been my practice leader while I was at Green Gulch. I heard that she was coming to City Center for practice discussions with students, and I signed up. Usually the Tenzo has 5 workers in the kitchen, but they only gave me 2. I know. I complained to her about it. She said, Judith, Deborah Madison was the head cook here at City Center, and she did it alone. I said, I'm not Deborah Madison. Some years later, Zen Center honored Deborah Madison at Green's Restaurant. I couldn't go because I was supervising construction during the work period at Tassajara. Her email address was on the announcement. So I wrote her a note and told her that Tenzo before me had carefully taken all the pages out of her book, the wonderful cookbook called Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, 3-hole punched it, every page, and put them in binders with her recipes times 40 people. That's great. I used it a lot. I also told her about Linda's comment. She wrote me a very sweet note and said Linda wasn't remembering correctly. Being Tenzo was really hard, especially doing it alone. Another story. I was in the hallway outside the kitchen. Kosha McCall came running up to me and said, John Grimes said there's a crisis in the kitchen. What crisis? He said, we're out of coffee. Okay. Another, yeah, it is a crisis. An old monk came through the kitchen. This is another story. An old monk came through the kitchen. I can't remember his name right now. Saw a pan full of food ready for dinner serve up, stuck his finger in and licked the food off his finger. I said, stop. It reminded me of this in the Tenzo Kyokun. under no circumstances allow anyone who happens to be drifting through the kitchen to poke his fingers around or look into the pot. And another, a young woman came to the Friday night public dinner. She came into the kitchen after the meal and said to me, "That was the worst blah, blah, blah I've ever had." I was speechless. Then a man came in a few minutes later and said, "That was the best blah, blah, blah I've ever had." Exactly. I had been at Tassajara for 2 years, and if anyone said anything at all, it was, "Thank you very much." Except for a few senior teachers who had opinions. Okay. They won't be named. The last story is a dream I had while I was Tenzo. I was at the stove at City Center cooking something in a big pot. John Grimes came up behind me and I said, "John, it's burning." He said, "Turn up the heat and keep stirring." I left Zen Center on January 1st, 2001, and still supervised construction during the work periods until the fall of 2008. And I've gone to all but a few work periods since 1994. I handed my job over to Bernie McPhillips in the fall of 2008, and then he passed it on to Peter Brock some years later. They've let me read from the Tenzo Kyokun after the morning bowing at the shop whenever I'm there. Every instruction to the cook is applicable to the workers in the shop. Here are some of my favorite passages. The way-seeking mind of a Tenzo is actualized by rolling up your sleeves. I brought a piece of olive wood from my family's farm into Tassajara one year, and a woman printed, "The way-seeking mind is actualized by rolling up your sleeves," on it. It hangs above the altar in the shop at Tassajara. I also made a short film about work as practice at Tassajara called "Rolling Up Your Sleeves." In all the following passages, I always think of wood when greens are mentioned. When you prepare food, never view the ingredients from some commonly held perspective, nor think about them only with your emotions. Maintain an attitude that tries to build great temples from ordinary greens, that expounds the Buddha Dharma through the most trivial activity. When making a soup with ordinary greens, do not be carried away by feelings of dislike towards them, nor regard them lightly. Neither jump for joy simply because you have been given ingredients of superior quality to make a special dish. By the same token that you do not indulge in a meal because of its particularly good taste, there is no reason to feel an aversion towards an ordinary one. Do not be negligent and careless just because the materials seem plain, and hesitate to work more diligently with materials of superior quality. Your attitude towards things should not be contingent upon their quality. Handle even a single leaf of a green piece of wood in such a way that it may manifest the body of the Buddha. This in turn allows the Buddha to manifest through the leaf. This is a power which you cannot grasp with your rational mind. It operates freely according to the situation in a most natural way. At the same time, this power functions in our lives to clarify and settle activities and is beneficial to all living things. A dish is not necessarily superior because you have prepared it with choice ingredients, nor is a soup inferior because you have made it with ordinary greens. When handling and selecting greens, wood, do so wholeheartedly with a pure mind and without trying to evaluate their quality, in the same way in which you would prepare a splendid feast. One more. These things are truly just a matter of course, yet we remain unclear about them because our minds go racing about like horses running wild in the fields, while our emotions remain unmanageable, like monkeys swinging in the trees. If only we would step back to carefully reflect on the horse and monkey, our lives would naturally become one with our work. Doing so is the means whereby we turn things even while simultaneously we are being turned by them. It is vital that we clarify and harmonize our lives with our work and not lose sight of either the absolute or the practical. A joyful spirit is one of gratefulness and buoyancy. You should consider this carefully. If you had been born into some heavenly realm, you would most likely have only become attached to the pleasures of that realm, taking neither time nor opportunity to awaken the Bodhi spirit, nor would you be likely to feel any particular necessity for practicing the Buddha Dharma. Much less would you be able to prepare meals for the three treasures, despite their being the highest and most worthy of all things. How fortunate we are to have been born as human beings, given the opportunity to prepare meals for the three treasures. Our attitude should surely be one of joy and gratefulness. And just a little aside, I do a gratitude practice every day. It helps. Okay. We should also reflect on what our lives might have been had we been born in one of the realms of hell, as an insatiable spirit, as some lowly animal, or as a demon. How difficult our lives would be if we suffered the misfortunes of these four circumstances or any other of the 8 misfortunate conditions. We would be unable to practice the Dharma with the strength of the community, even though we had a mind to do so. Much less would we be able to prepare food with our own hands and offer it to the three treasures. Our bodies and minds would be bound by the limitations and afflictions of those worlds and would have to suffer their burdens. I was born into what many would consider a heavenly realm, but then lived in a hell realm for some years. By the time I went into Tassajara for that first work period in 1994, I had been released from that hell realm for 13 years by practicing with a sober community. It's been a wonderful dovetail joint holding these two practices together. They were men and women whose eyes were open to what is most vital in a life of practice, enabling us to have contact with the Buddha, the reality of life. After service, the last morning I was Tenzo, there was a ceremony in the Zendo to thank me. Each of the senior teachers asked me a question. My friend, the late Abbess Blanche Hartman, asked, "What does the Tenzo do first in the morning?" I responded, "Wakes up." Thank you very much. And now we're going to watch Rolling Up Your Sleeves, which is a little short documentary I made, all filmed at Tassajara, about work as practice.
Suzuki Roshi, our original teacher, came from the tradition of work as a big part of practice. Master Dogen emphasized practice as the entrance to enlightenment.
Mikwa, what are you doing?
I'm preparing for the day.
And what's your function here at Zen Center?
I'm the work leader.
And without work practice, there's something missing in what we're doing. So I remember Suzuki Roshi saying, sweeping first, then zazen. So, kitchen practice, every aspect of practice at Tassajara, whatever people are doing, has the spirit of zazen. And of course, sitting is the central part of our practice, but also it's not the only thing. So we practice the spirit of zazen in all of our daily activity. So every single aspect of our life is included in our practice. Everyone's practice is the same, no matter whether you're general labor, digging a trench, or the abbot, or whatever. The practice is exactly the same for everybody. It's just that the activities are different. Nothing's ignored. Every activity becomes an opportunity to practice. And when we started Tassajara, we did all the work ourselves. But the work practice was really the important thing. And because we had acquired a resort, and turning it into a monastery was what our practice was. You know, my experience is, it's a kind of mystical experience, that when you start doing initiating a practice like this, carpenters will come. So when you can go back and forth between work and sitting zazen without any gap, without any feeling any real significant change, then your practice is a pretty good place. Following and leading is the same. When you're following, you're also leading. And when you're leading, you're also following. So it's a complete practice and not just one aspect of your life called meditation. It's like work is what we're always doing. Even though people say, well, you know, zazen is not work, but actually it is work. Yeah, it's definitely work to stay focused and to stay awake and to reassert your posture all the time. It's a lot of work, plenty to do, you know.
Seeing it multiple times. I always love it because it's old friends, you know. Whoa!
My name's Laurie, she, her. Judith, you had just mentioned that watching the video again after, filming, editing, putting it all together yourself, that you enjoy it every time because you're seeing old friends. And I was wondering if you were also referring to the tools.
Well, I've been a carpenter since 1970. I joined the union in 1979. So I have a wonderful relationship with tools. Yeah, I appreciate them.
Gasha, thank you very much for the film and your talk. This was kind of eye-opening or being in moment. I just wanted to know, after you're in your practice, when do you realize that moment when you realize that everything is Zazen? Like in the film, you put it very nicely that man working and doing the bells is kind of same, or doshi, or it is not a very different thing that we practice, right? But people see it in different way. But when do you realize? It's very hard for outer people to see that we are not very different from what you're doing, just different roles. When do you realize that, oh, this is all same? I hope I'm making some sense. When did you realize?
Well, I've had good teachers, and Mel being one of them. His description of that. And then the other was Steve Stuckey. My friend Bernie and I did 2 cabin remodels during Steve's first practice period at Tassajara. And he went and did a talk in the morning to his practice period. And then he came out, and I was putting a piece of wood through a table saw. And he walked around and stood back until I was finished. And then he said, I just did a 1-hour talk on one pointed concentration, and I just watched you do it. So, practice is being right here, right now, every moment. And in the 1970s, I have to say I wasn't practicing anything. And I cut my fingers on a table saw because I wasn't paying attention in that very moment. So I have evidence that not being in the moment can be very dangerous. Okay, I'll tell you a little joke. So I did cut some fingers on a table saw, and I had to stay overnight at the Palo Alto Hospital, and this orderly escorted me down in the elevator to take me out. And I had my hand like this, and I had messed up these two, so they were like this in a cast. And he said, you want to hear a good joke? And I said, sure. He said, what's this? I said, I don't know. And he said, it's a carpenter ordering 5 beers. Okay. So, yeah. And I've watched people in the shop at Tassajara who were not trained on things come very close to really wrecking themselves. And so we started saying, if you're new to this shop, please show us your skill or be trained on a tool. And that's practice. right? It's like, because Zazen is just right here, right now, just right here, right now. So is work. Yes.
Hi, my name is Brooklyn, and I'm currently working on temple care. And it's been wonderful because I've had experiences of the 1 point attention, I believe you called it. And other times I have a lot of intrusive thoughts, and they're very, it's hard not to indulge in them. And I'm newer to practice, so I'm wondering, considering you've been doing this for a while, how has your one-pointed focus compared to when you first started? Is that sort of a muscle you've built, or do you still struggle with it depending on the day? Just curious about that evolution for you.
Well, I really think accidents are a good teacher. And ever since that accident in the 1970s, every time I turn on a tabletop, I'm like, okay, let's just be right here, right now, right? And that's with anything. Well, and if I was sitting this morning, and I often call my mind home like a dog, and I just go, come, sit, stay, over and over. And it's, so I also do this since the concussion and brain bleed. Well, no, actually, my granddaughter is 24 now, and she was about 3 or 4, and I was walking her to nursery school, and she fell and hurt her knee, got a big boo-boo. And she was standing up, and she had tears like this, and she went, and I thought, she's got the best mom on the planet to teach her, and I've been doing it ever since. If I get hurt, or if I'm sitting there and it's like, wah, 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 or if I get a boo-boo, instead of, damn it. So I don't know if that helps.
There, I'm Jen. In the film, you mentioned like when you're following, you're leading, and when you're leading, you're following. Can you elaborate more on that?
Well, that was Mel saying that.
I just gave you credit for it.
Yeah, I was just the filmer. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's see. Paul, help me out here.
Sometimes it looks like we're reading, actually just participating for the outcome. Sometimes in what seems to be following, we're actually expressing how to be part of group activity.
Right. Like I did used to supervise a lot of work. And then when I handed it off to Bernie, I'd be driving down the mountain, and I'd go, oh, that was so stupid what he did. I'm just, and then finally one day I'm driving in, and I go, Judith, just ask, how can I help? Right? So that's following instead of being, because I was used to leading. And now I still, it's hard sometimes, but I still say, how can I help? Right? Because Peter, like right now, my friend Peter Brock is the, whatever you want to call it, the head of the shop work period stuff, construction. And it's exhausting. And so this year, our friend Dan Young and I are going to help Peter during the work period. And I will supervise the first week, and Dan will do maybe the second week, and then Peter, so that, because it can be a lot of work keeping Tassajara going. And I just, since 1994, I have met some of the most incredible tradespeople on the planet. And we all, meet down there once or twice a year and just go at it, because there is a lot to do. But I just love all these people. Plumbers, electricians, carpenters, gardeners, everybody. People that prep the food. Anybody on, is there any way to let them? Who have we got here?
Hello, Judith.
Who is that?
Terry Baum, do you remember?
I don't know my glasses on.
Oh, okay. Okay, okay. Maybe you can see me a little better now. Anyhow, I just want to know, what are you doing now?
I'm going into Tassajara the 8th of April for a week of the work period.
Ah,
Other than that, I've been writing a bit. I'm what I call retired. It's got quote marks. So, but I've been writing.
and what are you writing?
Well, I got a letter to the editor published in the Chronicle a little while ago. I'm their thoughtful leftist.
Oh, wow.
They like me. I've had about 20 published. All a little left of center. Yeah.
Congratulations. So you're focusing on political writing to the Chronicle, or what is your...
Well, since I retired, I actually went to Houston and helped Galen Godwin at the Houston Zen Center when during the pandemic, they bought a 40-acre retreat center. And I went and did some work there twice. So I'm retired, but I work for Zen Center when I can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It's been fun. I hope you all enjoyed it. I love how the instructions to the cook just it's all about work, and it doesn't matter what you do for a living. they're all great suggestions.